Hey, welcome to Teal Tinted Glasses, episode 32. With me today is Hockey Jerk. We will have a very important bear joining us very, very soon. But you know what? I thought we probably need to get this started. I probably need to get my voice out of my headset. There we go. Hockey Jerk. It's one of those things where obviously it's been an incredibly eventful week in Sharks hockey. So I think we need to uh, address the elephant in the room. Get things started, and that is how will the return of the XFL affect the San Jose Sharks?
Well, it's going to be a tough one because I know, especially Brent Burns, the personality that he is, I know he's going to be interested in slugging the pigskin around. And he strikes me, too, as the kind of guy who would be down for a scramble. Um, so I think the biggest concern is Brent Burns hanging up the skates in favor of the cleats, for which may or may not have some cool flame design on them, as well as spikes on the bottom.
And with us, as promised, Mr. The Bear has joined the show. Zach, we were just talking about the effect that the new XFL will have on the San Jose Sharks. That's the biggest news story of the week, clearly.
Well, you got to only hope that Vince McMahon, right? That is the commissioner of the XFL.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just better hope that the he absorbs the Mikhail Bodker contract. That's all. That's all San Jose can hope for.
Oh, but seriously though, obviously, the big news story of the week is obviously Joe Thornton being injured. Obviously, just a freak play where Bodker just kind of collapsed and fell on him. The good news is obviously that it is the not the same knee that he injured last year. The bad news is, of course, is that he did have an arthroscopic procedure on his other knee, which now he's got two kind of bum knees. Obviously, they haven't really given a timetable to be back, but I feel like this is based on just what little research I've done and my WebMD PhD. I feel like 6 weeks is probably your expected timetable here. Have you heard differently, Zach?
I I'm trying to remember. It was on Twitter. I believe it was Dry Scrape was the username, and he actually had a good breakdown on the different grades of the injury. And the tweet that I saw was that a grade 2 orthoscopic procedure, you're looking at 4 weeks, and as soon as you get to grade 3, you're looking at six or more.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like with the knee injury that Joe Thornton had last season and how quickly he returned from that, the miracle that he had in his back pocket has been used. And so you have to expect a normal recovery period here. I mean, I'm the same age as Joe, and every morning get out of bed, it's a new, like, oh, that didn't hurt yesterday. I can't even imagine I've played that many games as a professional athlete, what it must take. And at some point, Father Time just has to catch up.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I'm optimistic. I know. I've seen in the chat that he won't be back until the playoffs. I'm a little more optimistic than that, but until we get more of a solid timeline from not me with my WebMD PhD, then I don't know. I'm optimistic. Because Joe Thornton has kind of been a freak of nature. I mean, he played through, like, I don't even know how he played last year in the playoffs. Like, I don't want to know what kind of drugs allows you to play on no MCL or ACL.
All of them.
Yeah, all exactly. Oh man.
I
Yeah.
think realistically, March, I think he could be back in time to get a really good tune-up. And this sounds crazy, but shutting him down, getting the knee cleaned up, getting some rest in his legs, I would rather Joe Thornton be a little rusty and perhaps a bit refreshed and recovered, as opposed to having played all the way down the stretch.
Right, and I feel
Like,
like that's kind of my thankful thing here too, is that I'm happy that he was smart enough, and the team as well. Was smart enough to say, okay, well, let's deal with this now. Don't play with it down the stretch. Don't be completely, don't see how bad it will be after, in come April when after playing on it all that time. Okay, now come April, should you be in the playoffs? How's the knee? Like, I'm glad that they went this way with it. Jerk, what are your thoughts on this injury?
Yeah, I agree, and I think the Sharks, are fortunate enough to have other guys besides Joe Thornton, stepping up. I mean, obviously, Timo Meier stepped up, and that is a product of playing with Joe Thornton. But even then, his game is leaps and bounds better than even the beginning of this season, which really says a lot for his development. And then, for all that was said about how Tomas Hertl couldn't play away from Joe Thornton, well, that's all that he's done this year, and he's on pace for a career year, and he just looks like a better, stronger player in general. And then you have guys, Kevin LeBanc, all of the sudden this, cool, underrated playmaker that we have, and Jonas Donskoy is having a good season. Even in flashes, guys like Mikhail Bodker and Barclay Goodrow have both been huge parts in Sharks come from behind wins. So I think compared to last March, I think the Sharks are better off to survive without Joe Thornton, so to speak. But at the same time, you look at the points, Joe Thornton was on pace for a bounce back year, and for him to go down now, it does suck because he was playing some really good hockey. But as Mr. the Zach the Bear said, it would be nice to just keep him out until, say, March, and then get him a couple games in so that he has that extra little bit of energy to push through whatever may come, whether the Sharks do make the playoffs or whether they don't.
Yeah, and obviously that's the big question: is can they hold on to a playoff spot without Joe Thornton? And it's funny because I feel like every time we really get on this team, it seems like they kind of prove us wrong a little bit. I mean, before this recent stretch of games that was so, that was all compact together, a lot of people are like, are the Sharks going to be in a playoff spot just after this stretch of games? And here they are. I mean, without Joe Thornton, that's obviously going to get more difficult. I don't think it's a given that they're going to be a playoff team at this point, but I don't think that they're going to be as bad as they were last night either.
Yeah, and Anaheim and Edmonton and Los Angeles all having struggles definitely helps the Sharks.
Definitely. Zach, what do you think about that? Like, do you feel like this team can still drag its butt into the playoffs?
I think it can make it. I think it has the personnel to be a playoff contender. Obviously, you take out the 101st greatest NHL player of all time, and it's going to be difficult. But at the same time, they've got the to be interesting what they do with that number one center position. But they've got the tools, especially with Martin Jones coming back, Aaron Dell playing well. They've got the goaltending. They can steady the ship. We have to in a terrible stretch of games. It's a really compacted schedule for the Sharks. And so they're going to have nights like last night. I power watched that earlier today. And that's one of those game films that you just burn the tape. There was nothing redeeming defensively. It was as discombobulated as the Sharks have looked all season. It's tough to put that on Aaron Dell. Could he have perhaps stolen 2 points? Sure, but it would have been grand theft. The defense in front of him was not playing up to their usual level. So if the defense can right the ship a little bit, the offense can keep, plugging along. I think it was really encouraging to see that three primary assist effort out of Kevin LeBanc, who suddenly has decided he's a playmaker in addition to, having probably one of the best releases on the team. If he can really figure out that offensive flow, and I've tweeted a lot about it, Kevin. I've talked a lot about him. He's top 3 on the team in points per 60. His primary points are good. If he can just get a little bit luckier on the shots, the Sharks could have, a piece that's going to help replace that secondary scoring that they've been looking for, especially now with Joe Thornton. Is this the opening that Kevin Labanc needed to cement a spot in that top six? Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how they do. I was impressed. I was surprised and probably a little bit impressed too that they left Hurdle on the wing. I really thought that for sure Hurdle's going back to center. But I think like Couture Hurdle, I like that combination. I feel like it's kind of an important relationship too because you need someone to take those draws, and Couture for some reason has not been as great in the circle as he has previously, and Hurdle's kind of covered for that a little bit. So I'm kind of impressed that they kept that together. Were you surprised that they kept that together and didn't just automatically Hurdle back to center?
Not one bit, because Tomas Hurdle is not a center in the NHL, as I've been saying for, I don't know, forever.
What about you, Jerk?
You know what? So I was of the belief that, since Hurdle was the Sharks' best, statistical faceoff guy on the team, I was thinking, okay, maybe he can evolve into a center. But the way he's played on Couture's wing, especially this year, I'm totally 100% with Zach. Like, he, should be on the wing always. Hurdle at wing must be always. And you know what? I'm not surprised because, a lot of that offense, like I said, still runs through Joe Thornton. And, if you have kind of, like you said, the Hurdle Couture, like, power duo, if you will, still going, then the Sharks need to milk that for as much as they can. And then I think, too, the emergence of, Chris Tierney kind of helps that along, too. I was kind of hoping that we would see Chris Tierney centering Pavelski and Meyer just to see what would happen. I mean, they ultimately ended up with putting Pavelski back at center with Bodker on the right side, which I don't think is bad either, because that gets you a nice blend of speed, physicality, and puck possession. But, it's going to be an experiment. I think the second and fourth lines are pretty set. I think there's going to be some tinkering between the first and the third lines to kind of see what works, especially depending on how long Joe Thornton is going to be out for, whether it's 2 to 4 weeks or whether it's 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, I didn't look at the time on ice yesterday, but I wouldn't be shocked. Like, I feel like if Joe Thornton injury is gonna, I mean, it's gonna be some time. There's gonna be obviously time, at least a month. I'd be shocked if the Couture Hurdle, fill in the blank line doesn't eventually be the top line minutes wise going forward.
See, I feel like when it comes to, maybe not ice time, but I feel like when it comes to matchups, that line already is the top line.
Yeah, no, that's probably a fair point too. The one question sorry, go ahead.
One thing that did surprise me is the recall of Marcus Sorensen. If there was a time for Danny O'Regan to be recalled and give the Sharks some flexibility at that center position, I thought that was going to be the opportunity to just get another center on the squad. Barclay Goodrow has played very, very well in that fourth line center role, but he's got a lot of experience as a professional to draw from. Even though he might not be at that center spot, I thought that they might try moving things up and perhaps giving O'Regan another crack at that fourth line center position. But for the time being, it looks like they're just going to go with what they've got currently on the roster, which, again, is a bit of a surprise to me.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a surprise to me, too, because I feel like, O'Regan would be like the obvious call-up at that point. And I don't have a problem with Marcus Sorensen coming back up. I like Marcus Sorensen. I still wonder if O'Regan's going to be another guy, though, who's drafted a center but is going to be better served at the NHL on wing.
Yeah, that's really kind of the question that has been kicked around on O'Regan. The thing that always separated him for me is his awareness on the ice of both his teammates and the opposition. You've got to be able to play a key defensive role in the San Jose Sharks system with that center. You've got to really have your head on a swivel, and a lot of the offense is going to flow through you. We see it with Couture. We see it with Tierney. We see it with Thornton. And when those centers aren't going, that entire line isn't going. It's a system wide issue.
Yep.
And with O'Regan, at least at the AHL level, I see that capability. I believe he is able to get in there and play that 200-foot game that is quintessential Sharks hockey in the pivot position.
Yeah, I mean, he's had a few cups of coffee this year. It just doesn't seem like it's sticking with Peter DeBoer, unfortunately for him. But I mean, from look at the AHL numbers. I mean, the AHL numbers are definitely there. So you would hope that would translate at some point.
I do think too. I think there is something to be said about O'Regan in general this year. I mean, even his time in the AHL, he's not, by no stretch is he playing bad hockey, but he's definitely not where he was last year. So you have to wonder, I mean, whether, it's a line mates thing, whether it's a constantly, moving up and down to the NHL, AHL thing, but definitely O'Regan is having a down year when you compare it to what he did last year and kind of where we expected him to be for this year. But I think
stacked last year though.
That is the flip side of it is, O'Regan at any given time was playing with, some really good above average shooters, and it's easy to rack up the assists when you've got guys who can bury it. And I think the call up of Marcus Sorensen, I think that kind of puts the finishing touches on the writing that's on the wall for Jannik Hansen. I mean, 30 games without a goal, and he's been given multiple chances, and he keeps losing his spot.
Yeah, that's and I think something that's gone, I think, under the radar a little bit, just because he's been out of the lineup. Like, he's been healthy scratched so many times now that you just kind of forget about him. I mean, I kind of forgot Jannik Hansen was even a thing for a brief second.
Well, and too, you look at, like I said, how, I mean, Sorensen wasn't playing bad hockey with the Sharks, but, he was in a bottom six role, and he only had really a handful of goals, and, he's able to come up and is immediately put into lineup over, like I said, over Jannik Hansen, who's supposed to be the key to the Joe line. And I think that speaks volumes as to what the organization thinks of Sorensen, but also thinks of Hansen.
Yeah, it's a good point. The one question that immediately, like, once the Joe Thornton thing came down that he was going to be out long term after getting surgery was does this push the Sharks to make a deal? And I'm not there. Like, I don't know. For one, Joe Thornton, I don't think he's going to miss the rest of the season. So at some point, okay, he's going to go on the IR and his cap hit's going to go away for a little bit. But at some point, that's $8 million that's going to come back onto the cap. I don't know if I don't know. Maybe this is why I'm not an NHL GM, but I don't feel like I'd be thrilled if, unless it's John Tavares coming back, which isn't happening. Like, I don't really want to see like a knee-jerk trade. Like, where are you at, Zach, on this?
I think there's too many pieces that the Sharks have access to. I mean, this was a squad that had to waive Ryan Carpenter,
Mm-hmm.
Who I think is at the very least deserving of an NHL job. Had a rough start of it, but if that was really the litmus test, what's Mikhail Bodker and Jannik Hansen even doing on this squad?
Right.
Outside of contracts and having to be right on some of these players. I don't think it's panic mode yet. I think Doug Wilson is going to hold on. He's going to see if this team can at least toe the line with where they were at. They've got the talent to perhaps get a little bit more out of some players. I think we can all agree that we haven't seen what everyone was expecting out of Mikhail Bodker, that there's still some more that Timo Meier and Kevin Labanc can be offering. There's some capability there on this squad. And so if they really start to falter, I think that Doug Wilson might look to make a move. But, I mean, what do? You don't get a rental first-line center.
Right.
Really, outside of, as he's been reported to be looking for a fourth-line center, if Goudreau can keep playing as well as he has, and you've got Danny O'Regan on the farm, do you really need that?
Yeah, it bothers me too because like I hate this idea that you're gonna give up an asset for a fourth line guy. Like I would rather them, you know, bring someone in a little higher. I'm not saying you have to go get like the big trade target guy, but get somebody. The idea of trading for a fourth liner just makes my head hurt. Bring someone in who's better and push people down.
See, and I think what we could see, similar to what the Anaheim Ducks did this year, where you acquire a guy like Adam Henrique and he plays in your top six, and then when everybody's healthy, he ends up being a really good third line center. And if anything, I could see the Sharks do something similar to that. And I even said on Twitter, you look at guys like Thomas Plekanec, like Val Filppula, even like Henrik Sedin, who probably slot into this third line, maybe the second line on a Stanley Cup team, but guys who can play up and play down. And I think ultimately, if the Sharks are going to make a move based on Joe Thornton's health, I think that's going to be the direction they go.
Any thoughts on that, Zach? On what Dirk just said?
I just still think that the Wilson's is gonna hang tight. That's just my gut feeling.
Yeah, it's kind of my feeling too. I don't know. Like I said, the idea of trying to track down a fourth line center it bothers me just fundamentally. I mean, obviously you're not going to give up any like significant assets for that, but the fact that you give up assets at all, and that being your target, I don't know, it frustrates me.
And I think too, it goes back to what we all kind of said earlier, where, guys like Chris Tierney and guys, like Timo Meier and Kevin Lebanc have emerged to, like Zach said, to force Doug Wilson to hold tight because he does have assets who can play in place. And I think that was a mistake that we saw, when the Sharks traded for Roman Polak. It's like, I mean, okay, you have another defenseman, but Dylan DeMello was doing just fine, And I think Doug Wilson, I think he may have learned the lesson on that one. And I think if the pieces he has continues to play well, then I think he'll stick with them.
So Martin Jones obviously should be, I'm assuming he'll be back after the All-Star break. He's been practicing with the team. Do you guys have any, how do you guys feel that Dell did in Jones's absence? And, there's a lot, especially last night, I saw a lot of, why hasn't Grosnick seen any ice? Why hasn't Grosnick seen any ice? And to my thought on that immediately is, what are you resting Aaron Dell for? Like, once Jones is back, it's his net.
Yeah,
well,
I mean
that, but Troy Grosnick has just come back from a knee procedure himself and hasn't recaptured his form from last season as well. So
right,
Aaron Dell is really the only even qualified NHL starter that the Sharks have right now. Antoine Bibeau has probably pushed Grosnick into, at best, a platoon starter situation with the Barracuda. It's Aaron Dell or bust right now.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree as well. And I mean, the haters, if you will, the haters are going to point that, since Dell has started, these last 4 games, he's let in more goals than he has in previous games. But there are a lot of these games where, bad defensive judgment will ultimately cost you. And, specifically we saw that in the game against the Rangers last night. There were a couple instances where it didn't even appear like Brent Burns came back out for the third period. And I felt his play suffered at times. And I think in the third period, the team let Aaron Dell down. I mean, as much as they did try and fight back to come back and win it, and that is something encouraging that we've seen all season, where the Sharks have a newfound sense of battling back and trying to bring it even again. But at the same time, I feel like there have been way too many games where, they force the goalie to try and make saves that he can't make.
Yeah, I was fine with how Aaron Dell performed. I thought that, look, the team, like, again, I only watched the third period yesterday, and I'm probably thankful for that. But, you can only do so much when the team in front of you has let him down. I think, and that's not just and that's not just like this has happened to Jones a crap ton this season, where I feel like the team in front of him has also let him down. So I don't. Aaron Dell did what I expected Aaron Dell to do. I don't think that. I kind of hate this current Jones Dell. Oh, you're just a Jones lover. You're a Dell lover. Like, they play for the same team, the team we apparently cheer for. Like, I don't know. I thought Dell performed admirably in Jones's absence, considering the play in front of him on most nights.
Is it bad that I don't really want Martin Jones to come back yet because I like how well Aaron Dell's been playing?
No.
Like, I don't know. I just and maybe it's because I don't know. I don't know. I just like seeing guys who come in and don't really have a whole lot of people behind him, and then he, kind of makes those people eat their words. I mean, Zach and I talked about it on Twitter a while back. Why is a 22 at the time 22-9-3 record too small of a sample size, but 2-3 against playoff teams isn't too small of a sample size. And I think despite the fact that he's let in a lot of goals these last 4 games, I think he's played some really good hockey. And I think the people who don't think he can be a starting goalie, I think have kind of descended back into the shadows a little bit. I mean, not to say there's a controversy or that one or the other should be traded, but I just think I like seeing that we have 2 really good goalies who can help us win any game on any given night.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Zach.
I was just going to echo what Jerk said. You look at the first 2 seasons that Martin Jones was in the NHL, Aaron Dell has already started more games than Martin Jones did in his first 2 years before he was handed the reins to the Sharks crease. So one of those, you can't have it both ways.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You can't say this sample size is too small. Well, it was a smaller sample size with Martin Jones. So which is it? Was it really too small of a sample size? Or is it just not the sample size that you're hoping for? Because all he can do is play the games in front of him. Aaron Dell isn't going to march into Peter DeBoer's office and say, no, I'm starting tonight, club Martin Jones, and then go play a game. That's
right.
not how this works.
Yeah, no. This isn't the KHL.
Yeah, we're not talking. We're not breaking down XFL film quite yet, gentlemen.
Right.
And so I think the only thing, very best, he's only playing the games in front of him, and he's doing a darn good job, and that's that.
Yeah. I mean, I always I think because I don't know how. I think the spot where I get in trouble is I don't particularly think Aaron Dell's trade value is as high as some people think it is, and my only defense of that when talking about the sample sizes is that when Jones played a lot of those games in LA, Quick was injured, so he had no choice but to be the guy, and he played you play whoever's put in front of you. But Martin Jones had a really good spell there with Quick being down, and with a good team obviously in front of him too, albeit.
Okay, so let's play devil's advocate a little bit more. You know who else had a really good spell when they were the only player or only goaltender left?
Go ahead.
You remember the Hamburglar?
Yeah, I mean, there's that too.
Jeez,
there's that too.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew Hammond, or I mean, he had one of the all-time runs. So I don't know. It's tomato. We've all said it. I mean, trying to guess on goaltenders, it is the darkest of all arts. So really, what are we arguing about here? We're trying to break down a position that is equal parts voodoo, blind luck, and team defense.
No, I completely agree. Mike Nev's bringing up the Jim Carrey reference. Love it.
Yeah, there's another one.
Yep.
Or
definitely.
Steve Mason, who's made a career out of bounce back years.
True.
Yeah, True. You could not be more wrong there.
Whereas Andrew Hammond now, he is
he's in Colorado's minor league team.
Is he? I thought he'd be up with Varlamov.
He was. He was, but I think I read that they sent him back down.
Oh, there you have it. See, I don't know what's going on anymore. Okay, so let's move on here because I have a few other things I wanted to get to. Hey guys, breaking news: Don Cherry is still Don Cherry.
Jesus, I mean, I don't get me wrong. I'm definitely guilty of some Don Cherry-esque tweets at times. You may recall me saying that Paul Martin doesn't have any heart because he didn't play in his ankle brace.
Okay.
But my God, like, to say that Europeans can't play in the CHL, that's just a wild thing to say. I mean, especially in today's climate where, you know, it seems like every day somebody is upset by somebody else, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how many more times he's going to be able to be a hot take artist until Rogers is like, okay, we can't handle this anymore. We're getting bad publicity.
Oh, too many people still love Don Cherry for that to happen. I mean, I think that number shrinks by the year, but oh man, here's the thing. Just from watching, I mean, I watch a lot of OHL games at least,
Sure.
and you know, I just, for me, I want to see the best players at that level. I don't care where they're from. I don't want to keep some, you know, good European kid at home so some never gonna make it Canadian can play. I mean, when you look at junior hockey in general, I mean, any thing on that level. I mean, the amount of guys that play, the percentage that actually make it through, and then the percentage of that you know even plays 100 NHL games. The numbers drop off with, you know, at every one of those points. So I mean, I don't know. I don't see the benefit of it. I think, you know, the CHL banned European goaltenders because they were, you know, because we haven't had a few, you know, we haven't been maybe producing as many good goaltenders as we would like, and you know, so a lot of people automatically was like, oh well, it's because they're stealing all the jobs. And the thing is, I mean, that's hurt the CHL so badly. I think, especially in the Q, you know, where I think a lot of import goalies ended up going a lot of time was in the Q, and we've discussed the Q ad nauseum about how it's, you know, just blow it through the goalie. Well, that's a big part of why.
Yep.
I could not agree more. And literally the entire time you two gentlemen were talking, I couldn't wait to jump in and say, boy, the Q could really use some import goaltending right now. It is atrocious what is going on in French-speaking Canada with their young players. It's done nothing to assist the development. Carter Hart is all the way over in the WHL, who's the best CHL goalie we've seen in a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be in Everett no matter what you're doing with the imports.
Right. Like
it simply doesn't matter.
Get a spot.
Right. I can't remember the last time anyone said, yeah, we're going to play the crappy goaltender who's from Yellowknife.
It just bothers me, man. I feel like at that level, when you're competing to go, you know, to make it to the next level, you know, the best players should play. This isn't House League Pee Wee hockey anymore. Like, people should play. The best players should play.
And you know, at that age, you know, 15, 16, 17, it should be beyond the point of, you know, hurt feelings. Like, you're not 10 years old and, like you said, it's not House Pee Wee. You know, you need to play the best players, and if you're not the best player, well, maybe there's something that you can do to better yourself, you know?
Yeah. And I think it benefits, like, it sells tickets too. I mean, look at junior hockey. In some cities, it's hard to sell tickets, but if you can get some of these guys in there, I mean, look at some of the players that you know, they'll take the Mooseheads. You know, sticking with the Q. Like, look at some of the players they've had come through their system. Like, could you imagine what they would be like if there was no Europeans allowed?
No
Ehlers.
Well,
I was gonna say no Nikolai
no Nico
Ehlers.
Hischier.
Yeah, it's almost like those guys might be good.
You know, and that really speaks to what Halifax has been able to do, right? I mean, over the years, you've had, you know, just some exceptional European talents come over and play for the Mooseheads. But what we have to stop and think about this just for a second and bear with me.
Okay.
I'm of the opinion that minor league or major juniors is amateur hockey in name only. This is professional hockey for 15-year-olds and 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds. The way these kids are, sure, they go to school, but they're out there. They have mandatory autograph sessions and community work and all those kinds of things. It is literally the first step of professional hockey.
Mm-hmm.
What that does, though, especially let's say you're a Swedish mom and you've got this wonder kid that wants to go to North America and try to play in the NHL. Kid's 16, 17 years old having this discussion.
Yeah.
Right, with his parents saying, I want to go across the ocean to America, or North America, excuse me, and play hockey. If the kid's able to point to a place like Halifax and can point to success with European young men that have gone over there, that have transitioned successfully, that have parlayed that into a successful career, that's going to hold weight with parents.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what Halifax has done with an exemplary program for their imports. They're getting the best imports that want to go there. They know Halifax helps them transition, helps them with hockey. They're known for what they're able to produce. It's exceptional. And the rest of the CHL should be taking a page from Halifax. They should be sending people from their teams. How does Halifax do it? Every single year they find somebody, they get somebody, they convince the parents, they work with the kid. Everyone is successful. It's literally success story after success story. Why are you trying to blow that out of the sky as opposed to, hey, we need to send our assistant general manager to go learn the Halifax way? It is absolutely insane. I'm going to shut up now. I've been talking too long, but it's just such a sore point for me that this is even talked about, of kicking all these European kids out of the league when everyone should have a member of their staff in Halifax taking notes the whole damn time.
I could not agree more. And it's a stupid thing to say, especially before the top prospects game. I don't know. I mean, and it was funny because I read a tweet, and I didn't get a chance to fact check, but it sounds right to me. And it was about how when Don Cherry owned, I believe it was Niagara, the Ice Dogs.
Yes, I believe that's right.
The Ice Dogs, and he purposely kept the team out of the import draft, and they won such a small amount of games under his ownership, and they didn't. It wasn't until he got rid of his portion of the team that they actually started to start getting moving up the roster. And I think that just speaks volumes in itself. Like, if you're of the talent that you're not allowing on your team. There's this kid on the Hounds. Sandin, he's a defenseman, and I remember the first time I saw him, and he wasn't at the first few games because he's an import player, and he just hadn't arrived yet, and I'm like, who in the hell is this kid? And my buddy's like, oh yeah, no, he's the import guy, and now I think he's ranked, I think Mackenzie had him ranked in the early second.
Yeah, well, and to kind of, put a bow on all of that, there's a reason why Don Cherry is behind a TV desk for 8 minutes once a week and not behind the bench or in a manager's office.
It's really bad when Puck Guy has to correct me on Canadian hockey. Yes, he was right though. It was when the Ice Dogs were in Mississauga, and he is 100% correct. Zach, you watched the Prospects game, did you not?
Yes, I did. I was a little under the weather, so I wasn't taking my normal notes, but I at least was able to watch it.
Any thoughts from the Prospect game? I unfortunately was unable to watch it because I was working, but I was hoping that you could give us some insights of players that might have impressed you.
And with that, Zach has disappeared from the call.
Oh, man. Put him on the spot, and he just bails on me. What? Whatever. All right, we'll circle back to that. Perhaps. I understand, Mr. Hockey Jerk, that maybe you are a fan of a lot of teams. I don't know if the Rangers is one of them, but it sounds like, according to Larry Brooks, they're going to tear things down.
Yeah, so I don't have it posted anywhere, and I feel like it's ever changing in my mind. But all 31 teams in the NHL, I have them in different categories.
Okay.
And the Rangers are in the category of teams that could be better, but they choose not to be. And let me explain that, because you make a waiver claim for Cody McLeod, who literally cost Nashville some games last year with his, lack of discipline in the playoffs. But as for tearing it down, I mean, they trade Stepan, they trade Brassard, and so you think, okay, maybe they're going in a rebuild, but Zuccarello is, I mean, I could totally be wrong on this, but Zuccarello is the old, like, at maybe 28. I don't know exactly how old he is, but he's not, he's not ancient by any stretch. And, you have Zibanejad, and you have, Pavel Buchnevich, who's come up, and even the same thing, Ryan McDonough is, I believe, 27 as well, or 28, excuse me. And you just signed Kevin Shattenkirk, and now you want to tear it down? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me, especially, you still have that Mark Stahl contract sitting, and, you buy out Mark Stahl, it's going to be even more money on your cap. You still have Lundqvist, you still have, like I said, you still have Kevin Shattenkirk, who you just signed.
Right.
And I mean, I do think that the Rangers could do a little bit of retooling. I think as good of a player as Derek Brassard was for the Rangers, I think that trade for Zibanejad was the best possible outcome for them. And I think to their trade of, trading Stepan for the 7th overall pick and, Tony DeAngelo, I think that was another fantastic trade as well. But, with this, it has to, and with these kinds of things, you have to take time. And like I said, I don't know if a rebuild is the right way, because you can put your team on the shoulders of a guy like Zuccarello. I mean, he's shown to be such a worker and such a leader, and that's not really a guy you want to get rid of. And if you say you're getting rid of Zuccarello, are you going to get rid of Shattenkirk, who you just signed, and are you going to get rid of McDonough, who's your captain? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. And I hope that the use of the term rebuild is, kind of out of school, and it's more going to be like a reset or a refresh.
I think it's really hard to do a complete demolition. Like, I just feel like under the cap, it's just because you have to find takers for contracts, and you want to get obviously decent assets back. Like, I just feel like the almighty, like the nuclear option, I don't feel is there as much as it used to be.
Well, and especially when you consider like how many good young pieces that the Rangers already have in place who are successful. I mean, like I said, Mika Zibanejad, seems to get better every year, and you've had Brady Shea, who's stepped up and is playing a lot of minutes, and even Kevin Lacey's favorite player, Pavel Buchnevich, who has come out of nowhere this year and is second on the team in points. So I think you've got a good young core in place, and even, I mean, not young, they're kind of in the middle of their prime, guys like JT Miller, guys like Kevin Hayes, where you kind of just have to give it to them, and you kind of have to reset around those guys or refresh, as opposed to, like you said, just hitting the big red panic button.
Yeah. James Abel, would you take Rick Nash if you were a contender?
Absolutely not, because he goes through too many cold spells. However, if he could play all the time how he's been playing the last month, then I would entertain the thought.
Yeah, Rick Nash is one of those.
Go ahead.
Rick Nash is one of those guys that you have to get him and pray that one of his amazing historic hot spells is right during the playoffs.
Right.
I mean, you want to talk about boom or bust.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? Rick Nash has a Spangler Cup. So he clearly knows how to win. He's been there before.
It's true. He has been there before. Won the Spangler Cup. Oh, man. The Spangler. I love it. Zach, just circling back to you there. Was there any players? I got another question in the chat too for us. But was there any players that stood out in the prospect game?
There were a couple guys that Aiden Dudas was little 5'8" of him was, I thought, just an absolute buzzsaw. He plays for Owen Sound.
Mhm.
And former San Jose Shark Todd Gill, I believe, is his head coach, if memory serves. If my coaching chart of the CHL is current in my brain. But I thought he was impressive. I actually came away, Joe Valeno, who was actually granted exceptional status. I've had a real mixed bag with him, but I thought he had a real solid 200-foot game. When all the men in black coats were up there in the rafters, I thought that was an important game for him. Philip Zadania, he just continues to impress. I still have Andrea there at number 2, but Philip is really locked in there at 3 for me and is starting to push into that talk for number 2 in the ranking. And another player that I just wanted to point out over there for the Knights was Bouchard.
Mm-hmm.
I've been watching him. I feel like forever. I feel like he should have been drafted 2 years ago. He's been with London for what? This is his 4th or 5th year with London.
Something silly, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. So I feel like we're taking him for granted. I thought he had an exceptional night, had 4 assists, but just again, real quiet, really good. Evan's got just great size. He's a righty. I think he's 6'2" or 6'3", nearly 200 pounds. Might be there now, but he's played in London. He played on those squads that were gangbusters with the Kachuks, the Dvoraks. So he's been around the block. Now he's a leader on that squad as they're kind of finding their way. I think people are sleeping a little bit on him. I think he should be in that top 10 consideration just with the body of work that he's got. Good.
Oh, I was gonna say a question we had in the chat was have you seen the list Mackenzie put out today or the midseason rankings? If you had any thoughts on them, maybe players too low, too high. It was a question from the chat.
Well, my list is coming out for Hockey Profits here today or tomorrow, so that's the correct list.
There you go.
But I think there's a couple players that I think are. It's so tough this year because it is such a bumper crop for young defenders.
Yeah,
and that is a really tough position to evaluate when your players are 17 and 18 years old. I mean, even at the AHL level, where I watch the most amount of hockey, watching 20 to 23-year-olds is head scratching enough when they're defenders.
Yeah.
So I feel like it really comes down to who you really like. One guy I think everyone's really high on for his offensive chops is Ryan Merkley from the Guelph Storm.
Mm-hmm.
His defense is frightening.
Yes.
I struggle to even give Sharks fans it would be like if Michael Brodzinski was in the Norris Trophy race. That's the best way I could put it. I mean, Merkley, you would almost have to draft him and really consider a move for him to forward. I really think you would have to at least entertain that if you were drafting him. And talking about that in the top 15 as a project that you're not entirely sure what position he's going to play, that just scares the pants off me.
Yeah,
it really does, and that's something that I'm scared on. And my French is terrible, but Benoit Oliver Groulx. I always mess that up. How do you say it? Gruel. I've liked him. That another Halifax Moosehead, but he's a Quebecer. I just like his game. I like the professional qualities he brings. I really liked how he looked last night. It was just further cemented his position for me. I think I have him at 20 or 21 off the top of my head. And I think he could be a climber. And I also like Bach. He's the German kid that went to the SHL. He's going to be a riser as well. He's just too talented.
Yeah, I just want to echo what you said about Valeno. Valeno's a guy that kind of didn't really wow me at first, especially, you go in expecting this guy, exceptional status, and I wasn't really wowed, but man, he has grown on me a ton.
Yeah.
And if he could find his way into a teal jersey, I wouldn't complain.
He's one of those guys I wish I could go see live. Getting all the way to the other coast of Canada is tough. But, you watch the film and you really slow it down and really hone in on him and his shifts. He just does a lot of the little tiny things right.
Yeah,
and live, it's got to be even better.
Yeah, I was so disappointed because he got hurt just before the U17 challenge that was here in the Sioux last year, and he was supposed to be here, and I had to, I made sure I had tickets to a couple of those games, but he unfortunately got hurt just before, and I wasn't able to watch him, and I think that was one of my biggest disappointments of hockey last year was not being able to see Joe Veleno live.
Yeah. One other player that I'm a little higher on than a lot is Jakob Luko, L-A-U-K-O. My Czech is as bad as my French. But I think that's a guy that I'm really warming up on. I just really like the skill set. I like what he brings. I think that he's just going to be there. Maybe in those later, kind of in the bottom third. And so ideally, that's a player that you could hone in on that could be a swing for the fences for a team that made it pretty far in the playoffs, but is still looking to retool.
I had a question last week, and I didn't get to answer it last week because one, we ran really long, and two, I kind of just I had the question I don't have enough time to do my homework. And the question came from Seymour Sports, obviously big UND. Covers UND. Draft questions relevant to UND and the Sharks. Could the Sharks take Johnny Tyconic of Penticton? He's a UND commit. In round 1 or 2, where do you see him going? Johnny Tyconic's a good guy. He plays for Penticton, which actually is actually a really good team. It's in the BCHL, so it's kind of the league that you go to if you want to keep your college status available. Penticton's put out. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say I believe Tyson Jost played there.
Yes,
Dante Fabro as well.
Dante Fabro as well. So it's a good program. They've put out some pretty good players that have become pretty decent prospects. The problem, I don't think that this would be a guy on the Sharks' radar. For one, it depends on how late in the first they're drafting, because a lot of lists that I looked at had him late first, early second, and those lists weren't updated. I know they've just been updated again. I don't see the Sharks going that way, because even though they do like to reach in the first, I just can't see them reaching for an undersized defenseman. That doesn't seem like their MO. It just doesn't, it doesn't really jive with anything we've ever really seen from that drafting table. Not that he's super size. He's a 5'11", what is he, 5'11", 160, 170. I don't know. I don't see it. It just doesn't seem like a Tim Burke pick to me. Zach, are you familiar with the player at all?
I haven't been watching much of the Junior A. There's just not a really great year for them, but I would echo your sentiment. Josh Norris is a player that I thought was a bit of a reach last season. Since the Christmas break, he's really stepped forward for the University of Michigan. I think the Sharks really have to swing for an offensive forward that maybe like Merkley, turn him into a center.
Yeah.
Just damn the Cannons. I mean, this is I have my top 20 ranking of all the prospects in the Sharks system is coming out on The Athletic sometime this weekend during the All-Star break. And that is the one glaring hole that this organization has. If you want to talk about two-way centers, a real good mixture of defenders, a decent complement of goaltenders, but there's more NHL goalies than there are jobs. So right. I really like what Doug Wilson has done over the years, where it's why develop them when I can go out and trade a second and a third for him,
right?
And get a Martin Jones type, which obviously that took a little bit more than that. But there's plenty of talent out there. But a game-breaking center or a game-breaking offensive force, maybe Balsers, maybe Chmielewski, and those are big maybes, and that's
Those are
it.
huge maybes, yeah. Yeah, because
So-
I mean, we've seen time and time again guys that tear through juniors, tear through college, and then don't become anything in the show.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's the league is littered with them. I mean that's what I want. I want an offensive guy. Like that's why a guy that I would like, depending on where he falls to. If like I said, if the Sharks could get someone like Joe Veleno, I would be ecstatic.
Yeah.
Especially too, I feel like Joe Veleno is going to be. I feel like he's going to be this year's Matt Barzal, this year's Jacob Chikrin, where he really does have a lot to show you, but for some reason he's just going to slide down the ranks, and whoever scoops him up is going to be reaping the benefits for years.
It's a good call.
I mean, and I don't know. Like I mean, it probably doesn't help. He hasn't played a whole lot of games, but I don't know. I don't know. I could see him being an interesting piece, like you said, Ian.
Yeah. I want to end on this. Obviously, there's a lot of reports out there that the San Jose is going to host next year's All-Star Game. Thoughts on that? I know, Jerk, you did a ton of stuff on Twitter about this earlier. So I guess I'll throw the floor to you first.
Yeah, well, if I'm gonna do a little bit of plugging here, over at Teal Town USA, I say we was not me. Did a interview with Sharks COO John Totora, and he said that he was really pushing for the Sharks to host some kind of event within the next 5 years. And Pagnota from the fourth period comes out and says, Sharks might be hosting the All-Star Game next year, which is definitely on that 5-year timeline. So it's going to be interesting. The last All-Star Game that was here, evidently I don't remember. But I'm with Vince G. We can finally boo Bettman in person, and
we already had that opportunity when.
Yeah, we did, and but
let's not talk about that. We'll bring the whole show down.
And the Stadium Series game, and then the Stanley Cup Final 2 years ago. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a prideful person, I guess, but I like the idea of San Jose getting some national attention because. It's expensive and there are a lot of frustrating things about it, but it's home, and so it's cool, for people to be talking about it.
I just feel too for all the the talk of SAP being this super old building now because everyone's getting new buildings, all the time. But I mean, for an event like the All-Star Game to go there, I mean, the All-Star Game was I don't recall the All-Star Game ever being in Nassau Coliseum, so
maybe as a last-ditch effort, the All-Star Game could be at the Barclays Center before they leave, and
you know
maybe
what I mean? Like it's like I feel like I also feel like it's a compliment to the state of the building currently for some of the talk of it being old and whatever and outdated and blah 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 blah.
And go ahead.
I was just going to say it's old. I don't think it's certainly outdated. They've done a couple, retools and updating of the board and the LED ring around, the second bowl. I've spent a lot of time in a lot of barns, and you can do far, far, far worse than SAP Center. I mean, even buildings that were built after it.
Right.
They did a really good job with that building. It's loud, really good sight lines all around, decent assortment of luxury boxes to keep that money flowing. They've done a good job with it. It's near mass transit with Diridon Station right there. It's near downtown for, pre and post game. There's far, far worse barns in the NHL and around hockey than the arena in San Jose.
Well, and what's nice about it too was when they were originally building it back in the 90s, it was built with hockey in mind. And so, that's why you can sit in the very last row of section 201 and still have a good view of the game is because there's not a bad seat in the arena. And I've heard many people say that, and I still think it's true to this day. You can literally sit anywhere and have a good view of everything. And I will say it's a little curious that an arena that's already hosted the All-Star game is theoretically or allegedly getting another one before a place, like T-Mobile Arena is getting one. And we've seen in the past where the NHL wants to exploit the sexy new venue, and why not go to T-Mobile next year?
T-Mobile's a pretty busy arena though, so maybe it's just something where they need to. I mean, not that SAP isn't. I know SAP is an incredibly busy arena too. I wonder if it's just an issue of just I think T-Mobile's gonna get their All-Star game sooner than later. I just wonder if it's one of those things where to get the arena for the whole weekend or whatever, maybe there's just conflict.
That's a fair point.
God, I'm looking back at it because I was actually at that All-Star game.
Mm-hmm.
The Hartford Whalers were still a team.
That's true.
Jeff Sanderson represented the Hartford Whalers.
Wow,
that was a minute ago.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I remember watching that game on TV. That was something else. It was obviously that was the Owen Nolan calling a shot, right?
Yep. On Dominic Hasek.
Yeah. Okay. Dominic Hasek. Jeez.
I've just to give you
I feel old.
To give you an idea, like you said, as to how long ago that was, when that game was going on, my dad recorded that game on a VHS tape with a VCR, and I'm like 80% sure I still have that VHS tape somewhere.
I'm so impressed that you know what a VCR is.
Me too.
I'm not a freaking baby. Come on.
That warms my cold, old, bitter heart. Listen to some of these names. Guy Bear, he was there. Dmitry Kristich, remember him for the King?
Yep.
Kevin Hatcher, Jeff Sanderson, Scott LaChance representing the Islanders.
Jesus.
Dino Ciccarelli from the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Oof.
Wow.
Paul Kariya was still with the Ducks. Tony Granato was actually with the Sharks, and he was a commissioner's selection.
Because that was the year that he had his head trauma, I believe.
No, it was his return.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And then both the Dales, Howard, Chuck, and Hunter over in the East. Wow, that's a minute ago.
Yep.
Sandis Ozolinsh went, no longer as a Shark, though.
Yep, at Colorado. And Pavel Bure, he was still playing.
Wow.
Gosh. These are all names we grew up with. Paul Coffey, Scott Stevens, Al McInnes, Tony Amonte, Matt Sundin, Theron Fleury, who got a pretty decent greeting for being in San Jose. He loved being hated by the San Jose Sharks fans, though. That was one of the good ones.
He was the perfect heel for this city.
Yeah.
It's so funny too, because growing up that was my favorite player, which I had a hard time reconciling with being a Shark fan, but Theron Fleury is my favorite player growing up.
So the big question here is who performs during intermission at the All-Star game?
Oh God.
I'm thinking we'll start out with Smash Mouth.
Yep.
And
that's what I was gonna say. I'm assuming Smash Mouth won't be busy.
Maybe
it'll be.
Maybe E40 does.
Is it Rancid from around here?
There you go.
I thought so, Rancid was a local band.
All I know is it's Smash Mouth. I believe Green Day's from around here.
Yeah, but Green Day's had a hit too recently, though.
Yeah.
That's fair. I don't know.
All right, we should probably wrap this up. Zach, thanks for joining us. Tell the people where they can find all your work.
You can find me on the Twitters at Zach the Bear, ZAKKTHEBEAR. Real life is really messing with me right now. It's really interrupting my hockey viewing schedule, but doing what I can. I would also like to shout out to 1997 All-Star Andy Moog, who has one of the great hockey names of all time.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that's like. Remember the Moog stick for the goaltenders back then? It had the crazy curve because he would always put his blocker down to seal the ice. He was one of the first to really get that going, and oh god, those were the days. back when I had knees and shoulders. Man, that's how long ago that was.
Wow.
So how do you spell your Twitter handle for the Canadian viewers?
Oh, that's right. It's ZAKKTHEBEAR. Thanks for the reminder.
Of course.
I do have family listening, I'm sure.
Yep. So got a couple things going on. HockeyProfits.com will have our first round rankers out this weekend, and hopefully if you have a lot of strong coffee you want to get through, look for 3,000 plus words on the top 20 Sharks prospects on The Athletic.
Nice.
All right.
Mr. Hockey Jerk, what have you been up to lately?
Oh, well, as we recall last week, I was at 491 Twitter followers, and I said I was close to 500. I'm now at 503. How many of those are porn bots? I'm not sure.
It doesn't. Just go with it. Just go with it.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, Joe Thornton, I'm sure, or Joe Thornton's definitely got some empty net goals along the way. Why can't I have some porn bots as followers?
Pile them up.
I don't know. Maybe considering I have a overflowing supply of cool little Sharks knickknacks. Maybe I was considering doing some kind of raffle giveaway for hitting 500 followers. So something to look out. I mean, you can only have so many Mikhail Bodker pucks. AO, how many porn bots must one need? Hey, you know what?
37.
Numbers are numbers. Numbers are numbers. I've really been getting into, if you have a fantasy hockey team that you need advice for, you can send me a DM. You can follow me on Twitter at @hockey_jerk. And as always, I'm not a Pittsburgh Penguins fan. 8 days ago, the Montreal Canadiens played a game with Jonathan Drouin at right wing, and it seemed like everything was okay. Now he's back at center, but in addition to that, their other winger, Paul Byron, is also at center. So things are crazier than ever. And that's all I have to say.
But it was great.
For those Montreal is such a tire fire.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, there's this, there's a couple like Montreal related, tweets and videos and things that I've been keeping an eye on. And one of them said, if Montreal does a full rebuild, they must hold on to their good young players. And it's like, well, yeah, that's how you do a rebuild.
How does Mark Bergevin still have a job? I don't understand. I don't understand.
If you would like
the power of this, and because I say that, now that Montreal's going to go on a run, because that's what happens this year.
Well, yeah, because we can't get coaches fired anymore.
No.
So
apparently can't get GMs fired either.
Yeah, I mean, what 5 for 5 last year, and now 0 for 2 this year. So,
yeah,
not a good trend.
Not a good trend. All right, guys. I am Ian Reed. Of course, you can find me on the Twitter machine at IanBlogsHockey, which is the biggest lying Twitter handle ever because I haven't written anything in months, but I will at some point soon. Other than that, obviously, thanks for listening. If you want to, subscribe if you haven't already, please do. Also, you remember, if you do miss the show, you can always catch us on YouTube after the fact. Obviously, these videos never go away. You can also take us with you on your phone or podcast listening device. You can get us on SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, the works. If you don't, if we're not somewhere that you want us to be, let us know and we'll find a way to get there. Aside from that, thanks for watching, and we'll be back hopefully in a week's time. Have a good night. And now I gotta find the stop button.